A man walks into a meeting late, takes the only empty seat, says nothing, and within 2 minutes the entire room has quietly adjusted its tone. Nobody asked him to. He didn't clear his throat or raise his voice or say a single sharp word. He just sat there, present, unreadable, and people started choosing their words a little more carefully without knowing why. If you've watched this happen around you more than once, if people have called you cold, intense, hard to read, even though you weren't trying to be any of those things, there's real psychology behind it. Here are 7 signs you're quietly intimidating without ever meaning to be. Sign 1. You don't rush to fill the silence. Watch what happens the next time a question hangs in the air for 3 seconds too long. Someone always jumps in just to kill the silence. Even if what they say doesn't matter, they laugh, change the subject, repeat themselves, anything to make that empty space disappear. Researchers who study conversation patterns have found that most people experience even a few seconds of unexpected silence as a small jolt of discomfort, enough to make them speak before they've actually decided what to say. You don't feel that pull. You're still thinking. To you, that pause is working, not broken. But to the person across from you, it doesn't look like thinking. It looks like a verdict they haven't been told yet. They start replaying their own sentence in their head, wondering if they said something wrong, wondering why you didn't jump in to agree or laugh, or rescue the moment the way everyone else does. You weren't judging anything. You were just not performing the reflex that tells people a conversation is safe. And once someone decides your silence might mean something, they start watching everything else you do a little more closely, which is usually when they try to get a reaction out of you. Sign 2. You don't react the way they expect someone raises their voice. Someone says something pointed, hoping it lands. They're waiting for the version of you that gets defensive, gets loud, gets visibly rattled, because that's the version they know how to handle. Instead, you stay level. You say something short and calm, something like, "I'm not upset, I just don't need to be." And that single sentence does more damage to their script than yelling ever could. One woman dealt with a coworker who decided she was boring, simply because she wouldn't keep small talk going. They pushed harder. She didn't give them the reaction they wanted. She just said, "I'm not your entertainment, I'm your coworker." And the conversation ended right there. Not loud, not aggressive, just someone who didn't need their approval. Most relationships run on emotional mirroring. Someone escalates, you escalate, and the exchange feels balanced even if it's ugly. When you don't match their energy, there's nothing left for them to push against. So they call it cold. They call it intense. What it actually is someone who decided a long time ago that staying steady costs less than losing control. And once people notice you don't react the way they expect, they start paying closer attention to the questions you ask because those start to feel different too. Sign 3. Your questions go somewhere. They weren't ready for someone asks how you're doing and means nothing by it. It's a handshake, not a question. You answer it the same way because you know the rules. But when it's your turn, you skip the handshake. Instead of how's work, you ask what's actually been on your mind lately. Instead of how was your weekend, you ask if they're doing okay, the real kind of okay. There's usually a pause before they answer. Sometimes they say, "Nobody asked me that." You weren't trying to catch them off guard, you genuinely wanted to know. Psychologists who study introversion have pointed out that introverts tend to process conversation through longer, more deliberate thinking before they respond, which means they're often absorbing more of what's actually being said, while everyone else is just waiting for their turn to talk. That depth doesn't disappear when you ask a question. It shapes it, which is why your questions land somewhere deeper without you meaning to aim there. To them, it doesn't feel like curiosity. It feels like being seen a little before they were ready to be, and that feeling gets stronger the moment something actually goes wrong between you and them, because that's when your calm starts working against you. Sign 4. Your calm gets misread as not caring. Things get heated. Voices rise except yours. You stay level, you say, "I hear you, let's talk through this," and instead of de-escalating things, it makes the other person angrier. "You don't even care, do you?" they say. You care. You just don't yell to prove it. But in that moment, your composure doesn't read as strength to them. It reads as distance. They needed you to match their panic so they'd feel less alone in it, and instead you gave them logic. That gap between what they needed and what you offered is where the real damage happens. not in the original disagreement. Your self-control, the thing you worked hard to build, gets mistaken for indifference by the one person who needed proof that you felt something too. You're not cold. You're just not willing to perform distress to make someone else feel understood. And the strange part is, you usually saw this fight coming long before they did, because you'd already been reading them before either of you said a word. Sign 5. You notice things before anyone says a word. Someone walks into the room and before they say a single word, you already know something's off. Maybe it's how they set their bag down a little too hard. Maybe it's the half-second delay before they say they're fine. You can't always explain how you know. You just know. Jennifer Kahnweiler, who has spent years studying introverted leadership, describes this as one of the most underestimated abilities a person can have, reading a room fully without ever needing to dominate it. Most people need someone to announce how they feel before they react to it. You're already reacting to the version underneath the words. There's a real cost to this. People can feel it when they're being read that closely, and most of us were never taught to be comfortable with that. They get uneasy. They call you intense, unnerving, hard to be around, when what they actually mean is, you saw something I wasn't ready to show. You weren't trying to expose anyone. You just don't switch that part of yourself off. And because you notice this much, you've also learned not to hand the same version of yourself to everyone in the room. Sign 6. Not everyone gets the same version of you. You're warm with the people who've earned it and quietly polite with the ones who haven't. And it's not an act either way. Watch yourself at a gathering sometime. With one person, you're relaxed, fully present, actually funny. With someone new, you're pleasant but closed, giving real answers without giving everything. That's not coldness, it's a filter, and most people sense it within the first few minutes. Psychologists who study trust note that boundaries held naturally without apology or explanation often get misread as arrogance by people who've never had to earn someone's respect before. Some respect your filter immediately, understanding that trust has to be built, not assumed. Others take it personally, deciding you think you're above them, when really you just haven't decided about them yet. I'm not closed off, you'd say if you ever bothered explaining it. I just haven't decided about you yet. That filter alone makes some people uncomfortable because they've never had to work for someone's attention before. And underneath that filter is something even harder for people to sit with, which is that you don't actually need them to like you in order to feel fine. Sign 7. You don't need the room to like you. You can leave a gathering early, sit alone at lunch, spend a Saturday with no plans and no texts back, and feel completely fine about it. Not performing fine. Actually fine. Most social dynamics run on a quiet trade. You validate me, I validate you, and whoever controls that exchange has quiet power over everyone chasing it. Psychologists who study self-worth have long pointed out that the people we find most intimidating are usually the ones who expose our own insecurities. The fear that we don't measure up to someone who seems genuinely self-sufficient. You're not playing that validation game, and you never decided to opt out on purpose. You just never needed it in the first place. I'm not lonely, you'd say. I just don't need an audience to feel okay. To someone whose sense of self depends on being liked, that's unsettling, because none of their usual tools work on you. Not the subtle disapproval, not the silent treatment, not the pressure to shrink yourself to fit the room. None of it lands. That absence of a lever to pull is the most destabilizing thing a person can come up against. Here's the part most people miss. None of these 7 things are separate personality quirks. They're one thing wearing 7 different faces. You simply don't run on anyone else's permission, not for your silence, not for your reactions, not for your attention, not for your approval. Being called intimidating was never really about something you did wrong. It was someone else discovering, often without realizing it, that the tools they use to manage everyone else don't work on you. That's not your problem to fix. There's an old saying, watch out for the quiet ones. Most people say it like a warning. Maybe it's just the truth. The people who found you intimidating weren't reacting to a flaw. They were reacting to someone who didn't need them, and the right people figure that out and stay anyway. If even one of these felt familiar, you probably already knew it before this video said it out loud. Tell me which sign hit closest to home, And if someone in your life has spent years being called intimidating without ever understanding why, this might be the video that finally puts it into words for them.